Latest college football rankings are out, and your usual suspects, your Texases, your Alabamas, Oregon's number one, Ohio State's number two, Penn State is still there, BYU is still there, obviously, Boise State is there. So I don't really want to talk about the college football rankings so much today, as those are obviously going to change throughout the season. But with Georgia losing to Ole Miss, Georgia, who would have thought they would have had two losses on this season? You have Ohio State with a loss against Oregon. Now you have Ohio State who's going to take on Indiana in a big noon game in a couple weeks. That is a must-win game for Ohio State because they could have two losses, and that may determine if Ohio State and Oregon will meet again this time in the Big Ten championship game, and then again they could meet again in the national championship or in the CFP at least. Not only does Georgia go down, Miami, Florida also goes down. Again, I predicted that, but it made me think, is there a great team in college football this year? Has college football somewhat turned into, with better players, with on a global scale, better marketing? Obviously, there's better teams than others. Like I think an Alabama team with two losses who wiped the floor with their arch rival LSU. They would obviously, I think, defeat BYU pretty handily. They would defeat Boise State pretty handily. I even think they would defeat a Penn State pretty handily. I think there's a big gap there in the Big Ten between Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State. Indiana, again, I don't know how good they are. We're going to see how good they are for real when they go to Columbus. I think there's possibility they could win. I also think there's a possibility Ohio State would steamroll them. But with that in mind, we take a look at all these teams and all these players, and most of them, obviously your Quinn Ewers, your Jalen Milrose, your Dylan Gabriels, even Drew Adler. Most of them obviously do have star quarterbacks or quarterbacks of note. Carson Beck, there's a lot of mixed feelings on him, the guy at Georgia. Um, but is college football becoming a little bit of college basketball? Where, it may not be the one and done rule like college basketball, which is one of the reasons why I don't love watching college basketball. I think college basketball with the conference tournament has sort of turned into a 3 week sport. Conference tournament, March Madness. I mean, how many teams have we seen go under 500 in the regular season, win their conference tournament, and go on a Cinderella run? Just look at North Carolina State last year, led by DJ Burns. Is college football again with better stars, better players? Because we all know in college football, if you recruit more, you can have a dominating team. It is not the NFL in that regard. But with NIL and with the transfer portal, I think we're seeing teams get better quickly. How many transfers does Indiana have? One of the reasons why they are ranked so high this year and why this does feel like a once in a lifetime year for Indiana, because you can turn that program over overnight with all the transfers. But is it becoming a little bit of, now with the 12-team college football playoff and with teams more even than ever? I mean, we're going to have multiple teams, maybe seven, eight, nine teams with two losses that get into this playoff. Is it going to become a little of, you win your conference championship, conference tournament weekend again, whether it's Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Texas, whatever the matchup would be potentially in that SEC championship game. Of course, Tennessee is also involved in that. Whatever the case may be, is it a scenario of conference tournament weekend and then we go into the CFP and we really see who's for real? And in football, we know it's not a 3 game or a 5 game or 7 game series. It's one game. If you slip up, anything could happen. I do think it's interesting the first round of the CFP, the higher seed will get home field advantage, which I think matters more in college football than in any other sport, especially late in the year. Some of these colder environments, in the Midwest and the East Coast, compared to down south and the crazy student sections and all that. But I'm just wondering, and I've said this, there's a part of me that, like, Georgia loses to Ole Miss, or Alabama loses to Tennessee and gets their second loss, or even a one-loss team like Ohio State who loses to Oregon. I miss that sense of urgency of, my God, we lost the game. We not make the CFP, and Ryan Day may be fired because he loses one game every 3 years. You don't get that anymore. We're getting a one loss, even a two loss team, even a two losses. You generally feel like, okay, we're fine, especially in the SEC and Big Ten, because they're going to get, 8, 9, 10 slots out of this 12-team playoff. Feel like we're fine. We have the more talent. We just need to beat up lesser teams in our conference. And if we slip up, even if it's a close game, I think the concern for Georgia is they got blown out by Ole Miss. And then obviously the Alabama game was not close in the first half. But I think there is, some little bit of a lack of concern of even for Georgia, we have two losses. We'll be fine. We're not going to miss the CFP. So I look at it again. I thought Texas entering the year was the best team in the country. Then Quinn Ewers struggled. They lost to Georgia, and they have not really been the same team since. I thought Alabama was pulling away after they beat Georgia, and Alabama then since has obviously lost two losses and one to Vanderbilt. I'm still not believing that Oregon is the best team in the country. Yes, they are undefeated. They played some close games early in the season. I'm not the biggest Dylan Gabriel guy. And obviously, if Will Howard knows the clock and the situation there, I think Ohio State wins. I think Ohio State would be a better team on a neutral field. So, with all that being said, I think it could be really any given Saturday, any given Thursday, whatever day these games are going to be played on. This is the most balanced college football season of all time right now. I don't think the rankings truly matter as much. It'll depend more as we get to obviously December and late November and we see these conference championship games. But for right now, everybody is so even and so bundled up. Just play your best. If it's a close matchup, try not to lose, etc. Because you don't want to have free losses, even though, again, I think a free loss Georgia team would beat BYU, which is why I don't think we should have conference championship games anymore. I think we should just rank the best 12 teams in the country. And I think we should have an all SEC and an all Big Ten for the most part. And obviously, you could throw Miami and potentially Clemson in there from the ACC. That's what I would like to see. I think that the sport is so even now, we can see it. But again, I think at this point right now, there is no top team in college football. And really, about 8, 9 teams could win the CFP, which before was only 3 or 4 teams just a few years ago. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.